silver becomes a gift of gold, the deepest secrets will unfold. The night is shattered by the rising sun, and all the earth will sing the same song. Breathe on me, breath of love, wrap the broken pieces of this heart. Find the voices, make them still, and hold the shadows back and drink your fill. I'm tired of fighting words stored in my head, and all the dreams we've lived unsaid. The sun is rising, now it won't be long till all the earth will sing the same song.
Om Shanti. Om Shanti. Welcome to our first session of this group. And we have a very special session on understanding balance, our eternal anchor. And we have a very special Baba's Jewels from very far actually, but not much far because we are family, right? So on your left, Brother Stephen, he's from Australia. Actually, he came to Baba in 1994 and he was a resident in Madhuban, actually from 2006 to 19, in working as a manager of organization development at the Global Hospital. And then now currently based in Brisbane, BK Center, Australia. And there he has a business as a change and culture facilitator. And he has really great mastery on facilitation. I have some experience actually, I have seen him. And on your right, Brother Geoff, and he came to Baba in 1985 in Sydney, Australia. He mostly spent his time in Australia and also in Madhuban doing service. When he's in Australia, he lives in Peninsula Retreat Center, Baxter actually. And when he's in Madhuban, he stays mostly in Shantivan, working in the animation department. So especially, with animation and all. So he does that, and he loves exploring yoga in subtle reason and going into deep silence or point-like state. So we have very special conversation, and this topic, understanding balance, is really something fascinating, right? So over to you, brothers. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Rishi Bhai.
Yeah, thanks, Rishi. Feel welcome to come closer, so it's a bit more of a conversation. Family sitting around the campfire. And so I'd like to welcome all of those joining us online throughout the world. Because we're also live, I think, on YouTube. So that's wonderful. And Geoff and I, when we were first asked to come and have a conversation, and this topic of balance came to both of us quite quickly, and it was a couple of days ago, and what we thought we'd do was that often we find that a lot of people say, what does churning mean? and find it difficult around churning. And we just thought we'd give this topic as an example, because 3-4 days ago when we came up with the topic, we started to play with it and have conversations with it. And that was one part of the process. Coming up with the title was another part of the process, toing and froing and churning. And I was also going for walks with one of my friends, also a rishi from the hospital. And for 3 days we talked about balance and just really going into the depths of it. So today is just a conversation really as a example of churning, and we can do it with any subject topic, and we have so many sources of inspiration that we can tap into in terms of Avyakt and Sakar Murlis, but also our own experience. And so that's what we were going to do. So Geoff, what attracts you to this topic of balance?
Well, after being with Baba for like 40 years, I sort of like was looking back and sort of like looking at what actually kept me with Baba for 40 years. And if I go back way into the early days, like in the 80s, it came back to actually balance. Because from the start, I remember when I came to Madhuban the first time, one of the Avyakt Murlis Baba talks about, he actually did mention about balance between, like for example, karma yoga and yoga, knowledge and yoga, and things like this. So I actually, in the early days, I started thinking about, how to keep a balanced life, because if you're working full time and you want to lead a spiritual life, then you have to juggle, a lot of things, So, and my situation was, we all have different situations, but my situation was, for the first 6 months, was a bit of an upheaval as I changed my life, So the people I was associated with, the people I had relationships with, the people I was working with, all had to adjust to this new me sort of a thing, as I gave up all the physical vices like drinking and smoking and, going out and all of those sorts of things. So people were wondering, of course, and my family was wondering, Lockie family was wondering, what's going on, why are you changing so dramatically, So, but
such a common experience for all of us.
Oh yeah, for everyone, because it's a very big life shift, So, but then after settling down after 6 months and coming to Madhuban, I sort of like switched a lot of things, changed my situation so that I could keep a better balance between my spiritual effort and my Lokik sort of like commitments, like for work, So I moved into a brother's house and I started going to the butties in the centre, and that actually helped me a lot, because I realised from very early on that I need to keep a balance of yoga and karma yoga and plus the Murli churning all the knowledge. So I think after 40 years I can honestly say keeping a balance between yoga and karma, like karma yoga, is what actually helped me to survive for a very long period of time.
I'm really curious to know about how your understanding of balance has changed, because everything gets nuanced. So your understanding of balance 40 years ago as opposed to today, you and I were having a conversation about this, and our understanding of nature, like the body has this natural homeostasis, as in it corrects things. If you have a cut in your finger, then the body responds naturally to do everything to bring things back to balance. And nature itself, that whole thing of ecosystems and cycles of life and decay. There's this whole balance thing. It seems to be very natural. How has your relationship with balance changed throughout those years?
I think as I've gotten older and then longer in Gyan, I think I've started to trust myself to keep that balance through experience and through, trial and error, obviously. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to do things which don't work, but sort of like changing that and finding your feet or balance on your feet, rather than sort of, so I've tried to do that, but now I can innately know, because I work on computers for the last 35 years, but also now because, I'm in my 60s, sort of like, and still working on computers for quite long periods of time, I've started to now address the balance of time I spend doing this and time I spend in yoga and time I spend on myself, because doing service is wonderful, you get sustained by Baba a lot, but you also have to keep that balance of stepping back and, for me, going into silence. And luckily the office in Shantivan where I work, there's a Baba's room just the next door down, so if I feel I'm getting a bit strained or tired, I can just walk away, go into the next room and sit and chill with Baba, and then sort of like it refreshes a lot actually. I find even just 10 minutes, 5 minutes, it's wonderful,
I'd like to dive into two words that you've used there, and one was around trust, and how you said you learned to trust yourself as time went on, and that the balance became more innate. And when Rishi and I were going around, walking around the lake, we were talking about that it's sort of like it's equilibrium or balance. Baba uses the word equilibrium, is a natural state of the soul. And that the more we, as you said, those early days of your life was those yoga bhattis, and the more we experience just that natural equilibrium, it builds and it builds, and it becomes more natural, so that you're able to see when you're out of balance. What do you think has helped you refine that sense of it's innate? What's helped you tune in to that natural state of balance that lies within you?
Funnily enough, during COVID, because we all got locked down, I got locked down at the retreat centre. So for like 18 months, no one was coming to the retreat centre. We were just had this small sort of like stove fire going in the lounge of the retreat centre, and we weren't using any of the heating or much of the big electricity, so we were trying to keep all the costs down, and we had such the best time. But I realised then, because Baba said right at the start of COVID that this time is for you, this time is for you to sort of like do the yoga and become more introvert. So I thought I will do that, so I started doing 1 hour in the evening instead of just half an hour. And because I guess there's not much interaction during the day with outside, I was doing the shopping for the retreat centre as well, so going to the supermarket in masks and all of that sort of stuff that we did, But I realised that extra yoga power actually helped me a lot. I could see a change inside, and that helped me actually even further keep a natural balance, because I realized what I'd been missing. I was too skewed one side for doing service and karma yoga, but not enough yoga. But during COVID, I obviously went sort of more to the yoga side, but then I realized I could see the actual change in the sanskaras, and I realized that I was actually imbalanced. I was too much one side, not enough the other side, in order to change like Baba wants us to change.
Lovely, lovely. It's there's no substitute for yoga in this process of emerging our natural state of balance. It's there, just like as in the homeostasis. It's in the blueprint of the cells of the body. It's in the blueprint of nature. It's also in our blueprint, and there's certain ingredients that's required for us to tap into that natural state of balance. I'd just like to read from a Avyak Murli. Shall we do that?
Yeah, definitely.
So this one is from the 8th of June. So what we just did was we just used the Murli search engine, right? And we just went in and asked about balance and just came up with some Murlis. Fully recommend that you go to this, the 8th of June 1972. It's 72. An absolute cracker. Wow. It is so good. So I'm going a little bit down, and it says it's in line with what Geoff was just talking about in terms of that balance between karma and yoga. And Baba, in this particular instance, is talking about the balance between dharma. So he says, whilst performing action, let there be religion, dharma, that is completely imbibing dharma, and then because the balance of dharma and karma is accurate, the impact will be greater. So in this Murli, Baba talks about pairs, and he said there's many pairs with respect to balance, and this is just one of those pairs that he's giving an example of. He talks about the balance between love and power, the balance between love and law, the balance between service and yoga, etc. Whilst performing actions, you become engrossed in your actions, but if you do not have complete dharna, what would you call that? You tell people that life and situations of today have become like because dharma and karma have been separated. So ask yourself, is there equanimity, that's the word Baba's using for balance, in dharma and karma, that is, in your dana and in your actions? Or do you forget while performing actions, and then when your karma finishes, you become aware of the dana? At that time you remain very busy in karma. Do you also have dana? Is your dharma powerful when the karma is light? And he says something really interesting. And when Rishi and I were walking around the lake, we were looking at the link between balance being the foundation for all of the 8 powers, and that balance is the foundation in particular of the power of judgment. And when you look at the image of the power of judgment, it uses the scales, and each side of the scales has a pan. And Baba says, only when both pans of a balance work, only when both the pans of a balance work accurately does the balance have any value. So powerful, isn't it? Only when you've got that balance between both is there any value between that particular dharma and karma, or love and law, or love and power. What's your thoughts about that particular extract, Geoff?
Well, I mean, dharma is, of course, our natural religion. Of course, Baba says, peace. How peaceful am I while I'm doing karma yoga? I mean, for me, I've learned to pick up signals that I'm too much into the computer. I'm doing too much physical things.
So that's catching power.
So that's catching power, yeah. So I've learned to pick up these signals, So now, of course, the signals actually become more prominent when the body gets older because, it cannot do as well. Not as when you're younger, you're full of beans. not coffee beans, but
full
other
of beans.
other beans.
You know what full of beans means?
Yeah, I don't know if it's just an Australian saying, you're full of beans, which means you've got a lot of bounce and energy. But for me, I mean, as you become like physically and spiritually more mature, you know, you can actually read the signs and then realize that, you know, you need to take the time to keep that balance, especially of like Dharma is my peace, my personal peace. Because Baba says the religion of the soul is peace, you know, and purity. So as long as I keep my original peace, it doesn't matter what I'm doing, I can always come back to it, you know. But if I lose my inner peace, then I'll just get stressed and tired and, you know, I will not be keeping that balance. So I've learned to cherish that balance and cherish those signals that come, because they're not only Baba's signals, there's the signals of the body, they're your own signals as well, you know, that you need that balance. So for me, yeah, it's picking up that.
That word cherish is such a delicious term. What does cherish look like to you on a day-to-day basis? Because it's like things can go past really quickly and we haven't given any sense of sacredness or gratitude to that moment. So
two good words, yeah. Sacredness and gratitude. And I think for me, cherish the moments of during the day when I'm working, cherish those moments where I can just walk away and just sit with Baba and be peaceful, because I mean, that's like Baba says so many times in the Murali, that's the only thing that's going to save you at the end, is your ability to go up above and be with Baba within a second, you know. So we need to practice that while we do a lot of, you know, different things in our lives. So, I mean, for me, I've learned to cherish my own sort of like ability to, well, cherish the peace, cherish the time that I take off just for 5 minutes and cherish it with Baba, because I feel a big difference every time I do it.
Yeah. Before coming here, I was basically working up to the very last day. I have my own business. There's also, you know, when you have your own business, it doesn't stop. So there's been a little bit of interaction with it whilst I'm here. And you can feel from the moment that I arrived, I went, oh my gosh, how powerful is every moment that I have here. That I could see the subtle awareness of things that maybe I couldn't see at home. And then all of a sudden I went, wow, this time here, every second is so valuable. And I think, as Rishi said, I lived and worked in Madhuban at the hospital for 13 years. It was a 6-day week. And there were many moments. I remember one particular moment where we'd just opened the trauma hospital
in
Shantivana, and I was the administrator of the hospital. And most nights I was working till 8 o'clock, and I remember sitting at my desk having this sweet complaint to Baba, and I said, here I am at 8 o'clock, everybody's over at yoga and doing their things, and things need to be done to get this hospital set up and going. And I got this very strong message. He says, when you need it, I will give it to you, I will turn it on. And so for me it was that balance between giving and receiving, and to just test it, to demonstrate it. It was 8 o'clock in the evening, finished my work, went to Shantivan, and I took my scooter over, and I was just walking past Nawairbai's cottage, and the brother came out to me and he said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm just about to have my dinner. He said, come in and have dinner with Nawaibai. There's nobody to have dinner with Nawaibai. So Nawaibai and I were just having dinner for an hour, and it was just gorgeous. I mean, we were laughing and we were playing and we were talking about deep stuff, and I was feeling myself being so sustained. So I had that beautiful 1 hour with him. I walked out of the cottage, and the brother from Daddy Janki's cottage walked out and said, Daddy is calling you. I said, what do you mean? How does she know where I am? And I walked over to Daddy's cottage. He took me to Daddy's cottage.
Oh.
And there was about 20 to 30 senior sisters from around India. And she was talking to them, and she called me to the front and sat me down at her feet and started to sing my praises to everybody in the room.
Oh, wow.
And it was like that whole beauty of just surrender, that balance, that know that you're in Baba's lap. Quran Karavanhara is doing the things. And from that moment on, I didn't care that I was sitting in the hospital at 8 o'clock at night. I knew that when Baba needed to turn it on, and he would turn it on, and he did turn it on. So it gives you that sense of confidence. And as you said before, your sense of innateness builds. It's like that balance with karma and yoga. The more you experiment with it, the more you experiment with throwing it over to Baba. Can you tell us about any particular experiments that you've done over, say, a sustained period of time that's helped with that sense of balance or that sense of trust in yourself and Baba?
I mean, for me,
This is an unrehearsed conversation, by the way. We haven't rehearsed anything. We're just having a chat.
It's on the fly. For me, over a very long period of time, I've always, this word again, cherished my evening meditation. Because I remember one Avyakt Murli, I was in Madhuban, I think it was the late 80s, and I was there out of season in Pandabhavan. Gyan Sarovar didn't exist. And Baba was talking about, he said that evening yoga is only second to Amrit Vela, you know. Mm-hmm. And I had to think about that. I thought, why, you know? Because actually, you know, it's like the bookends. You have a bookend on a bookshelf. You know, you have the beginning and the end. It's like bookending the day. You know, you start the day with yoga for Amrit Vela, but you finish it on the other end, you know, with a good sort of like yoga experience, you know, and that winds up your day, you know. And I realized that, you know, you need both bookends to keep the balance. So I just sort of like thought of that. But otherwise, it's just one-sided. By the time you reach the end of the day, you're tired. You know, you can't focus properly, or, you know, your Amrit Vela the next morning might be tired, or just, you know, a little bit down, you know. So for me, keeping that balance both at the beginning and the end of the day, especially with yoga, has helped me very much, a lot.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I love that. I love that analogy of the bookends. I have the same experience, Geoff, in terms of I absolutely adore the 7 to 7:30 meditation. It's just something about it. And I invite you to think about, what is it that you cherish? What is it that you could experiment more whilst you're here about identifying what is it you cherish, so that you can really cement that when you go home. When we were sitting before this, having a coffee over in the art department, speaking of beans, and David was there, and I've known David for 30 years, as you have, plus, and I lived here for 13 years, as you know, so David and I became really close. We spent a lot of time together, cooking together, having fun together, walking, exploring. And I think the strength of our relationship is the fun that we have and the sense of humour, and that lightness, because Baba, in the same Murli, Baba is talking about the balance between entertaining and being in solitude. And so it was just a spontaneous moment of us horsing around, really, and playing with words and making each other giggle. And it's such a beautiful thing that Baba talks about. He says you should be entertaining to the extent that you remain in solitude. Your entertaining nature should not disappear when in solitude. Both should exist at the same time and to the same extent. When you become entertaining, you say that you have come down from being introverted. And when you become introverted, you ask, how is it possible to be entertaining? However, both should exist simultaneously. You should be in solitude in one moment and be entertaining in the next moment. There's so much more to it. It's so cool, isn't it? It's like that. If you think about the most joy that you've had, it's in relationships. Often, we get lots from Baba, but the joy of being with the family and the joy of that sense of how we can be ourselves and really have fun. How much has humour and fun been a part of your Brahman life, Geoff?
A lot actually. In the early days, of course, I when I came to Baba, I was 23, so I was very young and serious, because I had to study. Because when I finished the course, I bought every book in the centre and started reading it all at once. Sort of like
hands up if you've done that.
Yes.
Bought every a few hands up. Gotcha.
Yeah. So and of course at that time when I came to Baba, there was most of the Brahmins in the Sydney family were actually older than me. So I was like, and they were more mature. So I didn't sort of like, I had to, and I was. Even in high school, I was very quiet. Everyone said I was weird because I was so peaceful. Even in high school, it was really weird. So, but I liked just the introverted, the peace of just being with myself, basically. It was a really strange thing. But, but I learned to actually just become much, much lighter, and not let the heaviness of burdens sort of overtake me, especially because we have so many karmic accounts from 2,500 years, and these are hidden karmas that we can't remember that we've done, and they might come up and manifest in some way or another. So this is the balance of keeping knowledge and also being mature plus entertaining, being light, But nowadays, after sort of like a long time in Gyan, there's not much that can sort of like, I can't say phase, but you'll always find an odd sanskara, so might pop up sort of randomly, when a situation arises and you find yourself reacting. But of course the power comes from actually catching it before
There's that catching power again.
Yeah, it actually becomes external or before you react, Because I remember there was one brother who's left the body now, very older brother. He used to take positive thinking at the retreat centre, and I overheard one of his classes. I was standing up the back, and it was really good. He said being positive, but he said being equanimity in equanimous. I don't know that word.
Yeah,
anyway,
that word.
Being sort of like stable in terms of a situation, you respond rather than react, because a response is a measured, sort of like I've measured myself. I can see myself reacting, but then I pull myself back and I respond with a measured sort of like, I don't know the word, but a measured sort of like level rather than just emotionally reacting, or because anger comes up. We've been getting angry for 2,500 years to various degrees, so some things might affect us more than others, especially situations. So being able to actually see that before it manifests, you can see the sanskaras, so you again catch it and then assess the situation differently and then respond to the situation. Because otherwise, if I react and become a little bit inflamed, of course that might inflame the whole situation if it's that sort of situation, So,
I often say in the course, when I'm giving the course, I say, please don't believe a word I say. And I say the same today. Don't believe a word that both of us say, it's your own experimentations with respect to Baba's knowledge, and make it your own, and think about it in terms of your own context. I live in the centre with 2 other brothers. I always joke that I'm the youngest and the shortest. I'm 6 foot.
When I say shortest.
Yeah. Geoff is, Phil is 6'3" and Peter is 6'4". And we have, we put a lot of effort into building our relationships. They had been living together for 10 plus years before I came on board. So I'm a different personality, and it took a while for us to understand each other's sense of humour, understand each other's idiosyncrasies. So it took work and it took experiment, but we have dinner and fun together every Saturday night. It's in the calendar. Friday nights we have a meeting. We have breakfast and some dinners together. But a huge part of our relationship is the lightness in the house, the sense of humour, and the jokingness. I'm coaching a young woman who's studying in Boston, and she's currently doing a course on the ethics of humour. And it really helped me understand that it's really amazing that humour it can be degrading, it can be belittling, and really understanding pure humour. And that's what Baba is teaching us, is that lightness that we have towards each other without diminishing someone's sense of self. It's a way of keeping each other light and lifting each other up. And I think that humour is that great way of not taking yourself so seriously. And it's a really fun thing to do. So what about this whole thing? Baba talks so much about the balance between love and power. What have been some of the examples that you've seen, say from the daddies or some of the seniors, that has really brought home to you how the balance of love and law works?
I mean, love and law, Baba's often said, be loving to the Brahmin family, but then be lawful to Lokics, because we live a completely different life. But within Brahmin life, love and law, I think there's a correlation between being light and being serious, which is lightness is a playfulness or a love for interacting with others, whereas lawfulness is a bit more being sort of like, not detached, but, more serious a little bit, a bit more mature but serious. But Baba says to, 1 second, like you read, 1 second you can be entertaining, the next second you can be, or the next minute you can be sort of like quite serious depending on the situation. So I think keeping that sort of like that balance between the lightness and then the maturity that you need to do and the responsibility that you have in order to work through that situation. For me also within that, I read when I did the Murli search also on balance, one of the Murlis I thought was interesting, which relates to a personal meeting with Baba, and he said love for the Brahmin family, and this Murli that I came across in the Murli search said keep a balance between love for Baba and love for the family, because if you only have love for Baba, then it's only going one way. But of course, if you have love for the family, you're actually letting it spread outwards, you're actually sharing that love, So I thought that was actually a really good, interesting little sort of like paragraph in that Murli. And then I looked back on my early days that, I used to sort of like being sort of like young in Gyan, you're concentrating on your own spiritual life, but then of course we have karma with all of our Brahmin family, not just our Lokics, because we've been traveling the cycle together. We're in the kingdom together. We do different roles in the kingdom together. So, having that love for the Brahmin family is like what Baba says, is seeing the speciality in everyone, and they're Baba's child. And I like what Baba always says in the Murli, that even the last soul in heaven, Baba's chosen, so they have a speciality that Baba needs, So having that love and regard for everyone, sort of like every Brahmin, I think is very important to me anyway.
You've over the years, you've had a lot of exposure to the daddies and senior brothers and sisters. Who comes to mind easily when it comes to love and law?
Love Daddy Prakashmani. Had some wonderful experiences with Daddy.
How many people had first-hand experience of Daddy Prakashmani? Okay, less.
Daddy Prakashmani was always loving. She was like that loving grandmother, She was, she was amazing, because I started staying here in the early 2000s full time. I was working in the art department, and also with Prashant in the Awakening Channel. We were doing some projects together, and I was in Pandava Bhavan one day, and the yagya I was walking across the courtyard, and the yagya had just bought the first Toyota Koalas. So it was the first foreign car in the yagya, So Daddy Ji was there with a coconut, and there was like flowers on the car, and everything like that. And she saw me without any hesitation. She called me over and handed me a coconut, So together we cracked the coconut for this car, So, and I thought, wow, without hesitation, it doesn't matter who it is, they're walking across the courtyard, she'll just call them over and include them, So that was her love for everyone, all the Brahmins. So that, to me, that really, wow, that really touched me, sort of like her love. And of course, when you think of law, of course you think of Daddy Janki, because she was pretty tough, but she was also loving in her own way, And I saw firsthand, it was funny, Daddy came to Melbourne in Australia for a international conference or something, and it was at the Hyatt Hotel in the city. And she was staying there, so I was her driver along with Hansa and some others. But when you're in the car, you get to see firsthand how they interact outside of. It was so funny, I tell you. I've never seen that interaction, between Daddy and Hansa and everything. So I got to see a side of Daddy that I didn't normally see, because not being on the other side of the planet from London, you don't see her day to day. You only see her in the formal setting, of classes and, visits and, things like that. So to me, I could see that Daddy also kept that balance, so.
It's such an important part of the yagya systems of being an example and a sample. And we may not have the daddies, but there's lots of examples and samples around us. And you really need that power of judgment and power of discernment to take what you feel is suitable for you. I also witnessed very much both Daddy's love and law. I saw moments of, she'd walk from Pandav Bhavan up to Shanti Bhavan to read the Murli, and she'd have 4 or 5 brothers around her that were telling her what the numbers were today, how much they were ordering. And in that walking, I walked once and they were saying so many kilos. She said, no, this many kilos. And she'd be asking, what's the price per kilo? I said, no. And this interaction between her room and Shanti Bhavan, and just a sense of detail of that she was over and what she understood, it was like, wow, it was a real eye-opener for me. You'd see when in the days when we would have, March was a really busy season here. You'd have 13, 14, maybe 1,800 BKs. And Daddy would come up on the stage and she'd say, is there any any wish that any one of you feel that you'd like to have fulfilled before you go that you haven't had. And somebody would put up their hand and it'd be boom, it'd be given. Somebody said, we haven't had ice cream yet. That day we would have ice cream. Just the small things, but that sense of attention to detail. But I also saw the law. I saw when there was one brother who was misbehaving, and it was quite a high level of misbehaviour in Madhuban. And this brother was sent home. And Daddy at Merle the next morning was talking about it, and that's when I saw law. And that's when I knew that there was a real balance between love and law, and that you could be lawful, but with a great sense of concern for the yagya, but also concern for that person, is providing boundaries. And I've really thought a lot about that, is boundaries are really important, is not to be a doormat, particularly when you're a centre-wasi and you're running the centre, and you can be really over-polite with respect to someone's behaviour, and you're not setting boundaries. And what I've learned is that when you set boundaries, you're being kind, you're being loving. It's a way of expressing love. And I think there's so much for us to dive deep into as we navigate our Brahman life. Every single day gives us an opportunity to experiment. And Geoff and I were having this conversation around the Sakar and the Avyak Murlis. And I said to him, in terms of balance, what's the difference between the Avyak Murlis and the Sakar Murlis? What are your thoughts on that?
I personally, I've always loved the Sakar Murlis because it's like the raw knowledge. Baba he's talked about this in Avyak Murlis, about wholesale knowledge and retail knowledge. I don't know if you've ever heard these Murlis, He talks about that the Sakar Murlis are the raw knowledge. Brahma Baba became perfect through them. The daddies did, Mama did, all the seniors, The Avyakt Murlis are more to do, with personal dharana and dharma, But towards the end, Baba started doing sort of like the drill more, to practice. But of course, Baba was also drawing on Brahma Baba's experience over his life of being with, in the yagya and being sort of like before he became Avyakt. So, Bapdada had that wealth of knowledge, both Shiv Baba's knowledge plus then Brahma Baba's experience and knowledge, and that sort of like became combined, to form the Avyakt Murlis, which I thought was very interesting. But to me, still, I get a real kick out of the Sakar Murlis, because I'm a very visual person, which is why I do animation and graphics. I've always been like that. I can hear it, but while I'm hearing the Murli, I have to read it as well. It goes further in if I'm reading it while I'm hearing it. And doing that, I'm also almost talking to Baba and having yoga at the same time. And so the Murli impresses in me, if you know what I mean. It's not just hearing it on the surface, it's actually going inside, and I can almost have this really nice experience of hearing the Murli and going through time to not only when Baba was talking, but Baba talks about the Copper Age, the Golden Age, and the warrior religion and all. The whole sort of thing. So when I have that yoga and I listen, I have that experience of being transported there as well through Baba's words. Baba's words are very magic, So
yeah, I'm also very visual. I draw pictures, and that when I sit down for my 7 to 7:30 meditation in the evening, it's the degree of love to which I've drawn my pictures. They just, as soon as I sit down, everything comes back to me, all throughout the day as well. with respect to Sakar and Avyakt, I see that the Sakar Murlis are the foundation for balance, and the Avyakt Murlis are the language and the refinement around the dana associated with balance. It's really cool, you know?
Yeah.
It's sort of, if you, every day, if you just say for a week, look at the Sakar Murlis in terms of foundations for balance, and refine your ear of how Baba is providing the foundations for us to have equanimity, and then experiment with it, and then the magic behind that is on the Sunday you'll get some Baba will give you signs of what balance looks like in the Avyakt Murlis. So that's the sweetness of it. I just wanted to check in, are we allowed to get questions from the floor with a microphone? Is that possible, brother? Yeah. Because I'd love to know how this is landing for you, how you're receiving it, whether we're on track, whether it's touching the heart, and any thoughts or questions that you may have. We okay? We okay? A few questions? Sister, I think you have a question? Yeah?
Om Shanti.
Can you say your name and which country?
My name is Batya from Israel.
Israel. Okay.
Balance is needed in Israel,
Yeah.
of course.
The whole world, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
The question is sometimes the feeling here that out of balance between too much intoxication and how to balance this with peace. What if you have answers for this? You understand?
Yeah.
Too much.
I think so. How many times have you been to Madhuban so far?
20 years.
Oh, wow.
So a
Yeah,
lot,
okay.
but still intoxicated sometimes. And
Well,
the
that's
feeling
good.
is it's too much. How to balance this?
I remember the first time I met Baba, you know, Baba's actually speaking to you and he's giving you a blessing, and the first time I was there, I was just looking into Baba's eyes. I wasn't hearing a word, you know. Someone had to actually write it down and speak it to me later, you know, but I just, and once Baba had finished and gives you told, he just float off the stage, and I was like that for the whole night, sort of like off, sort of like in bliss, you know. But I think don't try and suppress that sort of like, you know, I mean, enjoy it, because when you go back to your own country, it will disappear anyway, you know. So like, it doesn't matter where you're from, you know, because we have responsibilities and Lokik responsibilities and work and things like that. That intoxication, Baba is filling you up, you know. So I think for me, we have to open it up, take it in as much as you can, enjoy it, because then when we get back to our own situations, you know, we will need to remember that and keep that stock and reserve, you know, because Baba gives us so much in such a short time that it can last the whole year, you know. So I think embrace it for me, you know. Yeah.
It's a really interesting one. Just a couple of days ago, one brother was talking, as most people would know, there was a terrorist incident in Australia 2 Sundays ago, and he was talking about that incident with, to my mind, too much intoxication and too much joy, as though, you know, drama is happening. And so for me, I felt there's such a need to have equanimity, because some people will not appreciate you being joyful about a situation like that. And so there's that balance that's definitely required around empathy in those situations. But I see the intoxication feeding my empathy. I see the intoxication feeding my power to accommodate, my power to tolerate. So I think that those experiences that you're getting, and that's the other word for balance, is the account balance, is that our balance account of balance accumulates as we go along. And the more we experience that equanimity, the more it's available for use in all of the different pairs that Baba talks about. And those pairs are, he calls praise and defamation, which is a similar situation to what you've said in this particular Murli. Baba is talking about the intoxication we receive when we have praise, but when we get defamation, we're not able to, we dive down onto the other side. The other pairs is love and law, remembrance and service, yoga and karma yoga, alokik and lokik, loving and detached, love and power, dharma and karma, entertaining versus solitude. So it's like that pure form of equanimity that comes from those peaceful experiences provides the fuel for all of the associated powers for all of those different pairs that Baba talks about. But great question, thank you. Any other comments or questions? We've got one over here. Rishi, front row, brother's side. If you could say your name and where you're coming from.
Om Shanti. My name is Kshitij and I'm coming from Canada. So my question is that, like she said, she has too much intoxication, or even I or anyone who comes to the Madhuban has a great amount of intoxication when we are here. But how to maintain that intoxication when you go back to the lokik, or when you go back to their daily life, work life, and how to find the balance there? Like you mentioned about all the powers to maintain or keep the balance, to use those powers to keep or maintain the balance in your life. So when you are in a daily life, in your work life, especially I work in a hospitality industry where it's completely opposite to the what we have here. Like I work in a restaurants. So how to find the balance there, or to how to get the same amount of intoxications or even closer to this kind of intoxication while at the work?
I think you're good for this because you keep a balance between your running your business, and living in the center, so doing a Brahman life plus your responsibilities of having your company.
I think one of the things for me is around experimentation and also closing the loop and having tight loops of your experimentation, because often we have an experiment but we don't close the loop. And closing the loop means to reflect on it, to draw out what were my strengths in that particular situation, what was working, what was not working, what do I need to refine. If you think about anything that's technology, even if you look around you in hospitality, there'll be innovations that are there that weren't there 10 years ago, weren't there 5 years ago, even in hospitality industry, right? And so you've got innovation all around you. Use that as a source of intoxication, of using the situation that you have in front of you as an opportunity to experiment. But it's that reflection in the evening and extracting the essence, the jewels, what was really working for me there? What was the foundation? What was missing? And then you go back and you experiment again. And it's keeping that loop, continual experimentation. So let's just take an opportunity to really experience that equanimity that we have truly natural inside of us.
अपने सुकर्मों के बल पर ही सतयुग में तुमको आना है। शिव पिता को अब याद करो। विकराल विनाश खड़ा आगे।
अब हम सबका शिव पिता ने बतलाया है।
शिव पिता को अब याद करो। पांडव शिव शक्ति सेना की रणभेरी अब फिर बजती है।
शिव बाबा के ज्ञान से फिर माया को मार भगाना है।
शिव पिता को अब याद करो, सतयुग में तुमको आना है। शिव पिता को अब याद करो, मुक्ति धाम तुम्हें जाना है। अपने सुकर्मों के बल पर ही सतयुग में अब तुम्हें आना है।
धाम में तुम्हें
सतयुग में अब तुम्हें आना है।
धाम में तुम्हें जाना है।
How close did I go to answering your question? Yeah, I think it's the I used to work in quality improvement and quality management, and there was one term that I loved and I use in my BK life, and it was called plan, do, check, act. It was called the PDCA cycle. Sorry to be too technical, but it's really useful. Yep, so plan. It means plan what you're going to do. Do what you said you were going to do. Check that you did what you said you were going to do, as in an experiment. And then A is for act. Act to hold any gains that you've made with your experiment. So your experiment may realize that that I'm really patient, and I'm really a good listener, and so listening is my superpower. And so listen more, be curious about the perspective of the other person, where are they coming from? That may neutralize the situation, your understanding of what that person's pain point is. So act to hold the gain, and then you've got a new plan, and then you do it again. So it's often, draw on your Lokic experience, your Lokic skills. And for me is around analytical, around understanding systems and processes. So I use that skill. As Geoff said, his skill is around visuals. He's very visual, and he uses that with respect to listening to Baba. So draw on that particular skill that you have and use it. Have we got time for more questions? Yeah? Okay. Any more questions? Comments? How did this conversation sit with you? Any insights? Anything that's, wow, I want to experiment with that?
On a rating of 1 to 10, how would you rate this?
Any comments? Any thoughts? Just happy? Just shy?
Was your question answered okay? Didn't ask that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, good. No more questions?
Good.
Yeah. So in summary, Geoff, after 40 years of playing with balance, what's your key take-homes to help people navigate that path of balance?
Balance of having yoga and living your life Brahman life. I mean, karma, and for me, it's always been down to the balance of yoga. And since COVID, I always start my evening meditation at 6:30 now rather than 7. That's for me. It works for me, and it helps me a lot. So for me, it's always been that balance that's kept me basically kept that equanimity over my Brahman life. So keeping that sort of balance. Don't get too busy. Take time for yourself, because you're the one who's got to go home and go to the golden age. No one else is going to do it for you, All of your efforts, everything that you do, your churning is for your own benefit, And through that, through our experience, we benefit others, including the vibration. Like Baba says, the yoga power you have, you automatically give others an experience, So that's been my balance for the last couple of decades, actually.
Yeah, nice one. Yeah. Yeah, mine is around experiment, particularly experiment with your experience of peace. Peace for me is the foundation of that equanimity and balance, and the deeper that I experience that, the more natural being balanced is, and it doesn't become a checklist. And I think that that's the key. That's been my shift from balance being a checklist around being more balanced in alokic activities, spiritual activities, and physical maintenance of the body. The more I experience peace, the natural it is for me to feel balanced. So have fun experimenting in the rest of your time in Madhuban, and thanks for coming and listening to our conversation with each
I
other.
like that word experiment, experimenting in yoga as well.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Everyone.
It was really lovely, right? So powerful. Actually, I really loved about, the pairs and really
That's Baba's language.
Absolutely. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I was just thinking, listening and thinking like two virtues, and both have to be there, but we really have to find the balance between, and that comes with experimenting, like with our life every time. So I loved about the peace and intoxication. You need intoxication, but also you need peace, right? And that's where you kind of get to know where to do what. So that's really lovely. Thank you so much for such a deep insights you offered.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, all of you.
Okay.
Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.
Thank you. What's next? More
A couple of
meditation?
minutes of
Finish off that song.
Thank you for your inspiration, for your life and love. Thank you for your recognition of the one above. Thank you for your sweet compassion, for your life of truth. Thank you for walking on